They say that what comes from the heart will touch the heart, but that never applied to my parents. The retirement party was held at a small Italian restaurant in North San Diego. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, had chosen it to mark 40 years of working at a local accounting firm. They were dressed as if attending an awards gala, glowing with pride. Relatives, friends, and former coworkers filled the room. No one knew the gift I brought would ignite a humiliation that had simmered through all 32 years of my life. Hence, I, Kennedy, walked in holding a silver-wrapped box with a navy blue ribbon. It wasn't some random thing picked up from a store shelf. It was the result of weeks of thought, consideration, and intention. I held it the way a child clutches a cherished toy car. I handed the gift to my mother. She glanced at it for a second, then silently nudged it aside like I had handed her an outdated phone book. The box slid across the table, nearly knocking over the centerpiece. I froze. "You think I need cheap little things like this to end my career?" she said, her voice smooth and cutting, slicing effortlessly between family and shame. A soft laugh escaped my father. He swirled his red wine, looked through me like I was a fired employee. "Well, is this really all you could manage, Kennedy?" he said casually, like reading a weather report. Emotionless, airy, but sharp like a razor. The room's mood snapped like a string pulled too tight. I felt every gaze turn toward me. Someone coughed, a fork tapped a glass. I didn't respond right away. My lips held a thin smile. My last layer of armor before dignity began to crack beneath my skin. "Then I guess you won't want to know what's inside," I said softly, my voice light but barely steady. I placed the box back in the exact spot they'd brushed it from. No one touched it again. I retreated to the back of the room, standing near the window facing the parking lot. A few tables away, my brother Brandon was laughing with his wife. They had gifted our parents a digital picture frame, now proudly displayed next to the towering cake. My gift, in contrast, sat to the side, an eyesore out of place. My mother looked back at me and smiled sweetly for the guests. She's always had her head in the clouds. Computers, software, who even gets that stuff? The comment wasn't directed at me, but like always, it cut deep. I was used to that brand of verbal backstabbing. I'm a software engineer at a company specializing in satellite navigation systems. I had just completed a project worth nearly $6 million. And yet I was still the underachiever who thinks too highly of herself in their eyes. All because I didn't follow the family path of accounting and didn't bring a gift with obvious dollar signs on the outside. I glanced back at the box. Inside was a key and a deed to a small wooden cabin in Tahoe, the very place my mother once called her dream retirement getaway. I'd spent 8 months hunting it down, renovating it, and finalizing every detail. I even picked linens in her favorite shades and stocked the kitchen with my father's favorite whiskey. But they never even touched it. And this wasn't a sudden stab in the back. It was just another cut in a wound that had been slowly, painfully deepening for years. I left the banquet hall just before 8 p.m., pretending to answer an urgent call from the office. In truth, I just needed to escape the pitiful glances from a few of Dad's old coworkers and Mom's dry chuckle whenever someone asked what I had given them. The cold wind in the parking lot slapped against my face, chilling my lipstick. I got into the car, slammed the door shut, and stared at the gift box, still sitting untouched on the banquet table, visible through the rearview mirror. They hadn't even opened it. No one asked about it again. Inside that box was every ounce of silence and dismissal I'd endured over 32 years, wrapped into one final act. An opportunity for them to see I wasn't the forgotten child anymore. I had bought the beachfront cottage in Pismo, about a 4-hour drive from San Diego, at the end of last winter, when an elderly owner needed to sell quickly before moving into assisted living. The 2-story wooden home wasn't large, but it had a balcony facing the ocean, sliding glass doors, an open kitchen, and a small garden where wildflowers bloomed naturally with the seasons. I clearly remembered the day Mom sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee, sighing absent-mindedly. If I could choose, I'd just want to live somewhere I could hear the waves every morning. I heard her, And this time, I didn't just listen, I acted. I drained nearly all my savings from stock bonuses, added in a quarterly bonus I'd originally planned to use to upgrade my condo. 6 months later, the house had new doors, fresh paint, a water filtration system, hardwood floors, and natural stone paving in the backyard. I drove up there almost every weekend, cleaning by hand, buying furniture, choosing each picture frame to match Mom's taste. Soft, classic, East Coast inspired. I took photos of every corner of the house and had them printed into a small album. I placed that along with a copy of the ownership deed and a handwritten letter inside the gift box. In the letter, I didn't mention sacrifice or ask for recognition. I simply wrote, I hope this will be a place where you both can truly rest. No meetings, no tax deadlines, just the sea and peaceful days. And they had tossed it aside without reading a single word. My phone buzzed, a text from Megan. My best friend from college. You okay? I stared at the screen for a few seconds before replying. They thought the gift was junk, didn't bother opening it. The typing dots appeared for a long moment, then Megan sent. They don't deserve it, but you still deserve a thank you. If it were me, I wouldn't let it slide. I looked back at the restaurant, the warm lights glowing from the large windows. My father was speaking, probably praising Brandon for his real estate project in Scottsdale, maybe even calling him the pride of the family. A phrase I'd never once heard, not even after my company secured a national defense satellite contract worth $12 million. I started the car, my hands gripped the wheel tightly, my mind replaying images of the peaceful home, the soft light at sunset on the water, and the hammock I'd hung on the porch, just waiting for someone to lie back and listen to the waves. Strangely, I felt calm, not because I'd forgiven them, but because I understood. The value of the gift didn't depend on their approval. It lived in the effort, the love, and the fact that it was my final attempt to do something for them, with no expectation of anything in return. But would this be the last time I tried? And if so, could I really let go? I didn't go back to the restaurant. I drove north instead. At exactly 11:43 p.m., I stepped into the beach house under pale moonlight. It was quiet, clean, untouched. I walked through each room, turned on the lights, and opened the glass doors to the sea. The air was salty but soothing. I pulled out my phone, opened the property management app. With one tap, I could change the beneficiary's name. I stared at the words transfer ownership glowing on the screen. And I wondered, should I give them one final chance or gift the house to someone who had truly cherished every step I'd taken since the beginning? I sat by the window of the beach house, a cup of mint tea still steaming on the table. The sound of crashing waves couldn't drown out the memories arriving uninvited and anything but gentle. Throughout my childhood, I was always the one at the edge of the table, literally and figuratively. While my brother, Brandon, was positioned at the center of every conversation, I was expected to stay quiet and not disrupt things with those strange ideas. I remember clearly, 7th grade, parent-teacher conference. Miss Kessler said I had exceptional logical reasoning and suggested I test for a prestigious tech prep school. My father laughed right in her face. She just plays around with computers for games. Let her stick with English, she can be a secretary someday. I never got to apply. Brandon, on the other hand, was sent to a baseball training camp in Texas for 2 months that summer. They called it a smart investment. I used to think maybe I was just too sensitive, that this kind of difference was normal in all families, until junior year, on the night I was supposed to submit college applications. I had a high fever, was half delirious, and couldn't finish the forms. I called my mom into the room, my voice hoarse, begging her to help me double-check the submission. She paused for a moment, then said, "You think I have time for your fantasy nonsense? I'm helping Brandon apply for a scholarship. That matters more." I missed the deadline. I lost my chance at a full ride to Stanford. I took out my first loan just to attend state school. Brandon went to a private college, majored in business, dropped out twice, finally graduated through paid online courses. Yet my parents still bragged about his degree like it was a family legacy. Even when I received a federal research fellowship for graduate school, Mom only scoffed. When the government gives money, they always want it back. Don't think that means they actually value you. I never received a real congratulations. No graduation party, no framed photo on the living room wall. That space was reserved for Brandon. Pictures of him in his baseball uniform, his wedding photo, him cutting the ribbon at his real estate firm, the firm my dad co-signed a loan to open. And me? They called me hard to relate to, too much, overly sensitive. I used to believe that if I achieved more, made more, they'd finally change. But no matter how high my salary climbed, they insisted my job wasn't real work. Whenever I spoke about satellite routing algorithms or AI applied to defense systems, my father would shrug. I don't understand any of that. Sounds like science fiction. But when Brandon closed a mid-range office lease, they threw a party. Mom even had the local article printed and framed, now proudly hanging in the center of the house. The only time my dad showed even a flicker of interest in my career was when I drove up in my new car, a Tesla Model Y, bought with a project bonus. He glanced at it and asked, "Is this one expensive? Could Brandon borrow it for a few days? His car's in the shop." I said nothing, but something inside me quietly shattered. I remember the evening I got the email confirming my promotion to technical lead. It was 8 p.m. I just finished a bowl of instant ramen after working late. I picked up my phone and texted the family group chat. I just got promoted. 3 minutes later, Mom replied, "Huh. Brandon signed a 6-month lease today. Pretty great, too." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in front of my laptop, staring at the brightly lit company portal banner. "Congratulations, Kennedy Blair, youngest technical lead in company history." I almost screenshotted it to send them. Then I closed the laptop. Not because I was afraid of being dismissed, because I already knew. Even if I invented teleportation tomorrow, they'd still ask, "So are you buying a second house for Brandon?" I stood, walked out to the deck. The waves kept rolling in, but this time they weren't just background noise. They were breath. And I realized I had never truly been allowed to breathe in the house I grew up in. I got back to my apartment at 2 a.m. The streetlights cast blurry streaks across the ceiling, like bruises that hadn't quite faded. I tossed my bag onto the couch, kicked off my shoes, and opened my laptop, not to work, but to stare at the blank screen, as if it could anchor me against the dizziness pressing in. I scrolled through my inbox, nearly 100 unread emails. Among them was one from HR. Subject line, "Congratulations, Kennedy 2024 Employee of the Year." Attached was an invitation to the internal awards ceremony, where I would be recognized in front of the executive board. I tapped the trackpad, hesitating. I used to imagine breaking into tears if I ever won that award. But now, all I felt was a cold, hollow quiet. Like I'd finally touched the mountaintop, only to realize no one from my family had ever turned to look. My mother hadn't responded to the message I sent last night. The one saying I'd driven to the beach house because I was too drained by the party atmosphere. No call, no reply. Brandon had sent one message. "Mom was a little shocked by your attitude. You should have been happy it was their day." Their day. I'd spent 8 months preparing, nearly emptied my savings to give them a once-in-a-lifetime gift, and my reaction was dismissed as bad timing. I had worn this kind of hurt so many times, it felt like an old sweater. Every holiday, I was the one cooking, cleaning, shopping for gifts, while Brandon simply arrived with his wife and kids and was celebrated like royalty. On my 28th birthday, I hosted dinner for the family. My mom gave me a notebook with a ripped cover. She said it was on sale at Target. A week later, she posted a photo of a luxury skincare set she gifted her daughter-in-law. The caption read, "The daughter I never had." I pretended not to see it. At 30, I was invited to serve on a NASA research advisory board. I called to share the news. Dad replied, "So, still not settling down with anyone, huh?" Every story circled back to one truth. I was never the person they wanted me to be. I sat in the dark, laptop glowing, with no purpose. My phone's flashlight flicked on. Accidental! I'd triggered the camera, my face reflected on the screen. Dark circles, pale skin, lips pressed tight. I didn't recognize her anymore. I remembered something Aunt Ruth, Mom's younger sister, once whispered to me during Christmas dinner. You're the only one in this family who can get out. Don't let them drag you back. I'd laughed back then, thought she was being dramatic. But now I understood. I opened my phone and launched the smart home app. The beach house had no access activity. No one had checked it. Maybe they'd already forgotten the gift I gave them. My finger hovered over suspend remote access. My heart raced, but I didn't press it. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure I wanted any tether to them anymore. Not even resentment. At 3 a.m., I stepped onto the balcony. The cold air slapped my face, but I didn't retreat inside. The same question echoed in my head again. How much more do I have to do to be worthy? And for the first time, I answered myself in silence. No more. It's time to stop. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house in Del Cerro. San Diego was wrapped in a soft haze, the windshield glazed with dew. I didn't drink coffee. I didn't play music. Just the sound of tires grinding against asphalt and the steady, cold rhythm of my own breathing. The door opened after the third chime. My father stood there in khaki shorts and a polo shirt, holding a glass of orange juice. His brow furrowed slightly when he saw me. Kennedy, something wrong this early? Yes, we need to talk, and you need to open the gift. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. My mother sat at the breakfast table, glasses on, reading the paper, her hair still curled in rollers. The silver movable gift box remained untouched on the side table, unmoved since last night's party. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said coolly, setting the paper down. It's a retiree's morning. I don't want drama. No drama, I said. Just open it, now. My father sighed and set down his glass. My mother shrugged and got up, walking over to the box like it was a task to get over with. She untied the ribbon, tore the silver wrapping, and opened the lid. A flicker of confusion passed across her face as she saw the thick envelope nestled inside. What is this? She asked, her eyes darting between me and Dad. Read it, I said. My father took the envelope and pulled out the documents. His eyes blinked rapidly before locking onto a notarized signature. This is a deed, he asked, voice lower now. A 2-story home in Pismo Beach, I replied. Ocean-facing glass doors, a wide porch, a small garden, and the master bedroom repainted in Mom's favorite color. I spent nearly 8 months finding, buying, and renovating it myself. The room was suffocatingly silent. My mother took the papers from his hands, flipping through the pages as if trying to prove it was a prank. Her face blanched when she reached the financial declaration. Kennedy, this must have cost a fortune. I nodded, said nothing else. Then, as if a switch flipped inside them, their tone changed entirely. My father smiled, nodding slowly. Incredible! You planned all this on your own? I don't even know what to say, my mother whispered, eyes suddenly misty. This is unbelievable. You thought of every detail. She stepped forward to hug me. Her embrace was stiff, her perfume sharp and cloying. I stood still. I didn't hug back. Thank you, truly. I'm sorry about last night. I didn't appreciate it the right way. The apology slid out too easily to be real. Just 7 hours earlier, she had called my gift cheap. Now that she realized it was worth over $500,000, her attitude changed like a TV channel click. I stepped back, looked them straight in the eyes. I want to ask something. What is it? My father looked up. If that box had held a batch of cookies or a handmade book, would your reaction have been the same? They didn't answer. So the value of a gift depends on the price tag, not the intent? Basically, Kennedy, don't complicate this, my mother said, a hint of irritation in her voice. I was tired last night. It wasn't just last night, it's been my whole life, and this morning only proves what I've always known. You haven't changed. This time, the gift was just too valuable to ignore. My father stiffened. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but fell silent. The documents you're holding, I continued, they're drafts. The transfer isn't complete. It needs the recipient's consent. What do you mean? Dad asked slowly, his tone tight. I mean, that house still belongs to me, and I'm not sure I want to give it away anymore. My mother's face shifted from pale to flushed. Her voice cracked. Kennedy, you can't pull a stunt like this on your parents. That's disrespectful. No. Disrespect is how you've dismissed everything I've ever done for 32 years. That house isn't a stunt. It was my last attempt to prove I'm worthy of being loved. Silence. A long, heavy silence, like the whole house had sunk underwater. I turned toward the door. My father's voice stopped me. So, what do you want now? I turned back and looked him in the eye. I want you to finally see me. Not my bank account, not what I can provide. Me. If you can't do that, this house will never belong to anyone but me. My mother collapsed into the armchair, her eyes no longer angry, just hollow. My father stood by the window, gripping his coffee mug without taking a sip. No one spoke for nearly a full minute after my words landed in the room like a dropped weight. What do you mean? He finally asked, voice deep and strained with restraint. You're punishing us by taking the gift back? It's not punishment, I replied. It's stepping away from a race I've run myself ragged in without ever being seen. My mother let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You really think we don't care? That house is proof you've always craved our approval. Exactly, and I don't anymore. I placed a copy of the property deed on the table, along with the unsigned transfer letter I never mailed. I used to believe that if I gave enough, loved enough, someday you'd finally see me. But I've wasted too many years on that illusion. My father sat across from me, his eyes weary. So what now, keep the house for yourself and cut ties completely? Not necessarily, I said, but I won't keep pouring love into a well that never reflects it back. The house can remain mine, or I can give it to someone else. To who? My mother snapped. Your new boyfriend? Or that best friend of yours who listens to all your whining? Maybe, I said, not blinking, or to the one person who's ever called me a source of pride without needing to see a paycheck first, Aunt Ruth. My mother's face went pale. Ruth? The one who never raised kids? Who's been renting her whole life and doesn't even own a decent car? She may not have a fancy car or a big house, I said, but she listens, and she's never made me feel like I had to earn her love. My father spoke next, voice quieter. And Kennedy, you know we're not great at showing emotions, but it's not that you couldn't, I cut him off. It's that you didn't want to. There were plenty of chances to change, you just never tried. I stood, grabbing my bag. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it to stop the cycle. I'm done trying to win your approval. Done using success to buy a nod of pride. Done sacrificing my freedom just to be called a good daughter. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father nodded slowly. You have the right, he said. But Kennedy, are you sure you won't regret this someday? I stepped toward the door without turning back. I've spent enough time regretting already. From today, I choose not to anymore. I left that house not as a cast-out child, but as someone who finally chose to walk away, on her own terms, without begging, without another extinguished hope in her pocket. As I drove through the first intersection, my phone lit up with a message from Aunt Ruth. Your mom just called. What happened? Her voice sounded strange. I didn't reply right away. I pulled over, opened the glove compartment, and took out the transfer documents from the night before. I stared at my name. Kennedy Blair, listed as the legal owner. One signature was all it would take, to keep everything or to give it all away. I snapped a photo of the paperwork and texted it to Aunt Ruth. Do you like living near the ocean? A minute later, she wrote back, Wait, what? Are you serious? I didn't answer that either. I just sent one more message. This time, I don't want the gift to be tossed aside. I folded the documents, slipped them into a new envelope, and closed the glove box. And in that moment, I knew I no longer needed anyone to define my worth. Not my parents, not my brother, not anyone, just me. That afternoon, I sat on my apartment balcony, holding a cup of cold tea, eyes fixed on the screen filled with messages from Brandon. Brandon, Mom just told Catherine's family that the beach house will be our summer gathering spot now. Brandon, she even said they'll leave it to the grandkids. Brandon, did you sign the papers yet? They think it's already done. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They still hadn't realized the house was never theirs to begin with. And worse, they'd already assumed Brandon would share in it, as if the time, money, and effort I'd poured in wasn't real. I didn't reply, I just tapped the video call icon for Aunt Ruth. I'm here, sweetheart, she answered. Are you free, Auntie? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Always, if it's you. What's going on? I turned the camera to show her the original deed. Her eyes widened. I'm thinking of changing the beneficiary. To who? She asked carefully. To you, if you want it. The line went quiet. After a few seconds, she regained her voice. Kennedy, I don't know what to say, but why? I took a breath. Because I spent my life trying to make others proud of me, and you're the only one who never asked that of me. You just loved me for who I was. But that house is your accomplishment. Exactly why I want it to belong to someone who values it. I don't want to see it turned into another family asset, handed to Brandon like some default prize. She went silent again. Then I heard Uncle Larry's voice in the background. That Kennedy? The one who still sends handwritten thank you cards every year? Yes, it's me, Uncle, I smiled. And if you still like gardening, there's a 10-foot patch of soil behind the beach house with your name on it. He chuckled. Now that's a retirement dream. That night, I didn't rush to sign anything. I called my lawyer to schedule a formal meeting and review the full transfer process, this time with notarized paperwork and clear names, Ruth Elgin Blair and Lawrence E. Blair. The next morning, I drove back to the house in Pismo. On the way, another text from Brandon came through. Brandon, Mom says I should take the kids next week to test out the place. Can you call the cleaning service? I hit the brakes hard on the side of the road, knuckles white around my phone. A few minutes later, I stood at the front door of the cottage. My mother opened it in her beige spa robe. Oh good, you're here, she said casually. We're picking out new curtains, beige or slate gray. No need, Mom, I said flatly. This house isn't something to be split like pie. She froze, frowning. What are you talking about? I haven't signed the transfer. The papers you have are just copies? The house is still legally mine. My father stepped in from the kitchen, soda can in hand. Kennedy, don't turn this into a scene. The family's enjoying it. No need to play power games. I laid the new documents on the table. This is my decision. The house will be transferred, but not to you. Mom stared, stunned. To who? Brandon? I looked her dead in the eye. To Aunt Ruth and Uncle Larry. The room froze. Kennedy, my dad barked. What the hell are you doing? They're giving the house to someone who gives love back? Who doesn't measure everything in bank statements? Mom's voice trembled. Your aunt? She has nothing. What makes her deserve this? She has a heart, she has kindness, and she has respect. That's enough. I stood, not waiting for a response. As I left, I heard my mother shout behind me. You'll regret this. Family isn't something to bargain away. But I didn't turn back. And for the first time, her words didn't land. I stepped out onto the porch, leaving the beach house behind as the waves whispered their soft farewells. Passing through the white gate, I turned to look back one last time at the place where I had once imagined my parents sitting together on the swing, smiling, saying they were proud of me. That moment never came. And now, I didn't need it anymore. 1 week later, at a notary office in downtown San Luis Obispo, I signed the final transfer papers. Aunt Ruth held my hand, and Uncle Larry stood behind me, silent but visibly moved. I hadn't explained the full story, but they understood. They always had. "You're sure?" Aunt Ruth whispered, as the notary slid the final document across the table. I smiled. For the first time in days, it felt real. "Auntie, I've been waiting for this feeling for a long time. That house used to symbolize hope. Now it represents freedom." My signature felt like a blade, cutting through an invisible cord I'd carried for years. In that moment, I was no longer the software engineer daughter who was never anyone's pride. No longer the one trying just hard enough, earning just enough, behaving just enough to be worthy of a cold nod. I was Kennedy Blair, and I'd just chosen freedom. That afternoon, I returned to San Diego. My phone had been silent for days. I'd muted the family group chat, but there was still one voicemail from my mother. Her voice was dry and clipped. "I know you're angry, but what you did? It's unforgivable. That house was ours. You'll end up alone, Kennedy." I listened without anger, without pain, only quiet. I replayed a voice memo from the week before. Aunt Ruth's voice, soft but sure. "You are the gift I never dared to wish for, but was lucky enough to receive." That was the difference. One side saw me as an underperforming investment. The other saw me as worthy of love. No strings attached. A month later, I returned to Pismo Beach, but this time not alone. Aunt Ruth and Uncle Larry had moved into the little house. They invited me for a weekend lunch, not for any occasion, just because we missed you. I stepped inside. The smell of apple pie drifted from the kitchen. In the backyard, Uncle Larry was planting rosemary, and Aunt Ruth was setting up a little table for her morning reads. "This is your home, Kennedy," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "No matter whose name is on the deed, this place will always be the result of the love you gave." I couldn't hold back tears, but this time, they weren't from pain. They were from being seen, being welcomed. No more proving, no more pleading. That evening, sitting alone on the porch, I opened my laptop and pulled up the code I'd left unfinished for a new project. I renamed the file new root _ KB1. Just like me, freshly cut from old roots, reaching into new soil, choosing my own direction. Someone once told me, family isn't where you're born, it's where you're loved without needing to ask why. I understand that now more deeply than ever. And that small wooden house by the sea, once a symbol of my desperate wish to be acknowledged, had become the period at the end of a long sentence written in conditional love. It's also where a new chapter begins, the one titled, "I am free because I finally chose myself." Kennedy's story is a powerful reminder that not all love labeled family is healthy. When validation comes with conditions and your worth is always weighed against someone else's measure, walking away isn't betrayal, it's liberation. Kennedy didn't buy affection or seek revenge. She simply chose to give love where it was safe to land. In real life, some relationships can only be healed through distance, and sometimes freedom begins the moment you stop asking for permission to be yourself. What do you think about Kennedy's choice? Would you have the courage to do the same in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and the journey to freedom.